Imagine this. You get your Sunday, maybe early pity, probably not. You're excited. But then you look at your roster and think, who the heck can I use him with? There's no summon characters. And then you see your MLC not fully cleared and your sadness increases. Is this you, ladies and gents? Well, fear not. In this video, we have the top 10 new best Sunday teams, and let's get started with number 10 on our list. On our number 10 spot, we have the Dr. Ratio Hyper Carry. Dr. Ratio being a decent pick in this meta, especially with the R-Rat team. But now Sunday is going to be able to make him a decent Hyper Carry, giving him those massive crit buffs as well as those damage buffs. And if you don't have the R-Rat team, which composes of Robin, Adventurine, and Topaz, then this is actually a pretty good team to use. This is not going to be a complete replacement to his other premium option, but it's still going to perform pretty good. Talking more about this team, we have Dr. Ratio as the main DPS, Sunday as our new Harmony character, giving insane crit buffs, again, also with that action advance, is going to make Dr. Ratio hit a lot more. And from here, you're going to be using a debuffer, either Pela or Civil Wolf. And then we have a good selection of sustains, including Ho-Ho, Adventurine, Fushuan, even Gallagher can get the job done. Onto the pros, I like the damage coming from Dr. Ratio himself. Usually he isn't really as powerful without his signature LC, but with Sunday he actually can hit some insane single target damage numbers, possibly hitting up to 100k per follow-up, more consistently 80 to 90k per chalk. Again, without his light cone, it's pretty nice to see. You probably won't be able to auto battle as there are some things you physically need to set up, but I do think it's not a lot to think about, which I think is very nice. And again, it's got really good single targets. Also, Sunday works really well with him, giving that energy that Dr. Ratio needs. Dr. Ratio is going to be able to get his ultimate a lot more frequently and is a pretty good replacement to the Tingyun comp that people usually use. It's not going to give as much energy, but what Sunday does is going to outweigh the value. Giving him that extra turn is really going to increase your damage output. For some cons, of course, it's Dr. Ratio's weakness. It's going to be his AoE. It's not really going to fix Dr. Ratio's problem. You also have to be really careful of your SP. And you want the other two allies to be SP positive so that Dr. Ratio can use his skill all the time. And this is going to require a bit of relic investment, as you want those two teammates to be pretty fast and getting those skill points before Dr. Ratio gets his turn back. I give this team a 3.5 out of 5 in the power scale, which is pretty decent for this meta. 4 out of 5 for ease of use, just really only paying attention to his SP usage, and overall a 3.5. On to number 9, we have the Argenti Hyper Carry team, including Sunday. One of the biggest winners of this patch is my boy Argenti. He benefits a lot from the crit buffs as well as the energy, which is great for getting Argenti's enhanced ultimate. Onto the roster, as we see, we have Argenti, we also have Sunday, and for the third slot, Robin is going to be really nice for the damage and speed buffs, but you could also use Tingyun, who's going to be really nice for this team, giving even more energy. And for sustains, we could either use Adventurine, or you could also use Ho-Ho. And if you use Sunday, Tingyun, and Ho-Ho, you essentially kind of get like a huge battery team. In this showcase though, we're going to be highlighting the Sunday and Robin synergy. Together, they're going to be really good units, and we can see why. They just give so many buffs to Argenti. This is going to make him hit pretty hard. Some tips to play this team: it's essentially like with most hyper carry teams buffing a singular unit, in which case this is going to be Argenti, but keep some things noted. You want Argenti to be slightly faster than Sunday and Robin. You want Robin to be the slowest unit so you can have her ultimate as long as possible. Let's talk about some pros. The Argenti and Sunday combination is actually really good. The thing is, Argenti kind of wanted that character to make him attack again, but with Sunday, it's going to allow him to use those skill points. And also, Argenti really likes those crit buffs. That energy is so valuable. Getting his ult back is a great indirect buff to Argenti. The AoE damage coming from Argenti is really strong. And also, it has decent single target if you are using its enhanced ultimate. And honestly, now Argenti is going to be a pretty solid character to use in the MLC. Some cons, I gotta say, there's quite a few of them. One thing is that this is a pretty expensive team. Not only will you be using 4 or 5 stars, but this team just doesn't really feel great without Sunday's signature. There are some workarounds. You might be able to switch adventuring for either Gallagher for the extra SP. That might work if you don't have certain units. Using Sunday and Robin, it's just two very important units. That might be a bit of an issue. Another con might be it's not really an easy team to play. Despite it looking that way, managing SP is going to be an issue without Sunday's light cone again. You also have to know when to use Argenti's ultimate, as sometimes you don't want to fill it all the way up, but sometimes you do. You really do have to know how to play Argenti well. But for Argenti mains, this is probably a very slight obstacle in the grand scheme of things. I give this team a 3 out of 5 in the power scale in terms of meta. It's not the strongest, but it's going to be able to reliably 5 cycle if you have all of the resources. 2.5 for accessibility. It's a medium hard team to use with really intensive relics. It's not going to be accessible to everyone, and 3 out of 5 overall. Really cool team. Let's get on to number 8 on the list. Onto number 8 on this list, we have Shui Yi break/carry. Shui Yi has gotten a very nice buff with the release of Sunday, where she was kind of like a DPS/sub DPS that kind of fell in terms of strength as Super Break went into the meta. While she was decent in Super Break, more people used other characters, and then she kind of went into the distance. People kind of forgot about her, but with Sunday's help, I think Shui Yi is still going to be a bit of a niche character, more powerful than she ever was. Starting with the team, we're going to have a crit-based Shui Yi. This means we're having decent crit, but Sunday is going to help with that. Then we also have Sunday buffing Shui Yi's crit and her crit damage. We're also going to use Robin just to get more damage and also speed buffs, as well as the action advance. You can also use Ron Mei. I think she's going to work pretty decently here for some additional break buffs. And for the last spot, I would recommend using Ho for the energy. Getting back Shui Yi's ult is going to be pretty high priority. How you want to play this team is essentially Shui Yi wants to go first before Sunday. She wants to attack, getting those stacks up, and then Sunday makes her attack again. You rinse and repeat and hope her follow-up attacks hit the right targets. You're also going to have some good speed, at least faster than 134 speed Sunday. It's pretty rewarding knowing how to play Shui Yi. If you have Robin, you get to do all of that again. Some pros, Shui Yi and Sunday actually have pretty good synergy. Sunday helps a lot of Shui Yi's kit. Shui Yi being pretty relic intensive, you really want a lot of break on her, but also you want good crit on her. And Sunday being able to just help with that crit rate, which is mostly the problem with most builds, it makes this team a lot more viable to play. It's got decent AoE, decent single target from Shui Yi, from her ultimate and her follow-up attacks. They're gonna hit pretty hard. And with this team, there's gonna be a ton of break effects. If you're fighting a boss, you're gonna be able to break his toughness bar pretty fast. That's just a really good pro to have. That just means you're going to take less damage. You're also just going to do even more damage because of the toughness bar is down. But some cons, there are going to be some major cons. This team is super expensive. It's pretty relic intensive. It's not an easy pick up and play. It's very specific light cones that are really powerful for this team. Shui Yi really wants that indelible promise light cone. It's really strong for her entire kit. Using that free-to-play light cone isn't a bad option, but you're going to focus a lot more on crit rate. And that's going to make you use a crit rate body instead of crit damage body, and that's going to make your damage suffer a little bit. Even if Sunday gives like a ton of crit damage, you're going to still feel that damage difference. If you do have that light cone, it's going to be really strong for your account at high super impositions. Other than that, you could also use other destruction light cones as well, so feel free to experiment. I'm going to give this team a 3 out of 5 for meta power scaling. It's actually pretty strong, especially when you have all of those units, their light cones. It's going to feel really powerful in the right hands. I'm going to give this a low scaling of a 2 out of 5 for accessibility. You do really need a lot. It just makes it a lot less accessible to a lot of people, and 3 out of 5 overall. Awesome that Shui Yi has a new and shiny team, and congrats to all the Shui Yi means for her big buff. On to number 7, we have the Jinglu Hyper Carry team. This is a pretty decent performance buff for Jinglu teams, as you can stay in the enhanced state for longer with the right team comp. And to be honest, Jinglu was kind of in need for a buff, and while not the biggest, it's something for all the Jinglu players to experiment with. This team features Jinglu as the carry, Sunday, Tingyun, and Huohuo. Now you can replace Tingyun for either Robin or also Pela. Pela is actually a really nice pick. Even Ron Mei is actually a nice pick here too. There's a lot of switches you can make for that Harmony slot. I just recommend Tingyun because as you pretty much just get 3 characters funneling energy into Jinglu, pretty much allowing her to always stay in that enhanced state for an even longer period of time. How you want to play this team is Tingyun should be the fastest at over 150 speed, and use her ult as soon as you start to gain energy, then Jinglu skill to enhance buff state. You pretty much just always want to be thinking about how can I stay in the enhanced state as long as possible? And you can do this by a combination of Tingyun's ult, Sunday's ult, as well as Ho-Ho's ult to put energy into Jinglu. I've said this before again. As soon as Jinglu uses her own ult, you don't want to waste their ults. Just try to get Jinglu's ult out there as fast as possible to gain that extra stack. Playing this team, it's actually pretty smooth as long as you have Jinglu over 134 speed. Otherwise, it just doesn't feel as good. Honestly, you just want Jinglu to be faster than Sunday, and this is going to allow you to do those back-to-back attacks. Some pros, I gotta tell you guys, and is good replacement to Branya, as that team used a lot of SP. And while it did work for much space for a Harmony unit, and you were kind of strictly using Pela. And like always, Jinglu always has good AoE damage. Ice is always great for freezing enemies, slowing them down. Jinglu does have consistent damage, which is great. You can pretty much never really have a huge downtime with your damage. Some cons is, it's not that the synergy is bad at all. It's just Jinglu herself is kind of just lacking damage and can't compensate for those HP buffs. Another con could be it's going to really require a ton of investment. You don't have her light cone. It's not really going to feel that great. It's a team that requires some luck, but is still doable. I give this team a 2.5 out of 5 in the power scale, 3 for accessibility. I think you do need Sunday's light cone to help with that SP management, and a 3 overall. Alright guys, on to the next team. We have an old face coming to the spotlight, and that is Topaz Hypercarry. This is a pretty interesting team, and it's pretty cool to see Topaz and Nami actually get a good indirect buff from Sunday. For summons, actually has a decent impact on Topaz's damage, and Nami is just able to hit some pretty insane numbers. As the carry, Sunday, Robin for buffs, and Adventuring for his sustain, and the follow-up attacks is going to help Topaz and Nami to use their attacks more. How you want to play this team? It's pretty simple. You just want to buff up Topaz before Nami attacks, and it's quite smooth sailing from there. But one thing is, you're going to have to be careful for the SP management. It's going to be a common thing with a lot of these teams because of the nature of hypercarries wanting to attack again. And sometimes you're going to actually have to basic on Topaz, as Robin isn't going to be generating any SP, and Adventuring is the only one really generating them. Just keep that in mind. Yeah, sometimes you are going to have to basic with Topaz, but that's not a bad thing. Nami is still going to be able to do a lot of damage. Another thing to note is Topaz's skill where she throws Nami. This is actually considered a summon attack, and this is going to get the extra damage buff for Sunday. So that skill is going to get that 80% damage buff. I think this is a really fun team, tons of single target damage, and isn't bad for this MLC 12. It's also a pretty easy team to pilot. Sunday was meant to buff summons, so synergy there is just feels very, very nice, and kind of just bump Topaz up a notch in terms of power level. Some cons is, I think the two main issues are going to be SP management. You really just have to be aware, and you can mess up pretty easily, but it's not really that bad once you get used to it. But just be wary. This team is not going to be as forgiving, as it's really only Adventuring giving those SP buffs. You could also slot in Gallagher. I think that might be an okay pick, like a really fast Gallagher, but that might hurt your survivability a little bit. I would say, I think the biggest thing you can get is Sunday's light cone. It's pretty powerful, making him SP positive, but I don't think it's as necessary as the other teams on this list. I give a 4 for power ranking. It's a pretty strong team. It clears super fast. It's got really good single target damage and do a lot. 3.5 for accessibility, and overall I'm going to give this a 4. It's a really strong comp for this MLC, and I think in future it's going to be pretty decent. Great team, and personally I love the concept. Let's move on to the next team. All right, on to the next team. We have our favorite big boss lady. The team features Acheron, Sunday, Jiao Cho for the huge debuffs and the burn damage, and either Gallagher or Adventuring can work pretty well here. Playing this team felt extremely strong. Like, it felt like Acheron had her new best team. It works pretty well, especially when looking at the grand scheme of things. We're getting even more damage with Acheron's skill now, also being able to get those stacks back just as good as using 2 debuffers plus a sustain that can add a debuff to the enemy. It really works well. Sunday really does well with Acheron and is a pretty good teammate. How you want to play this team is we want a really fast Jiao Cho, possibly on the wind set, making him come back more often, or you could use a sprightly Von Wax set. I don't recommend using both. will come back a bit too fast for this team. Then you want either Gallagher or Adventuring to go next. This is because we want the skill points before Acheron's setup, and this is how we're going to stack Acheron's ult. With this setup, it's a powerhouse of a team and can compete with a lot of Acheron's best teams, if not beat them at a super high investment. Some pros, I gotta say, it's a pretty simple team to build. Obviously, if you're not into speed tuning, it's gonna feel a little bit different, but other than that, it's just a really easy team to set up. Other pros, I gotta say, are just the huge damage. It's just Acheron's strengths, right? We have good AoE. We also have decent enough single target damage. Again, the Acheron and Sunday synergy is just pretty strong of a team. Also, it's got a good versatility. Apart from MLC, it can pretty much clear anything in the game. I think it's actually pretty good for pure fiction, and if you just need a good auto team, I think this team shines pretty well. Another thing is, I don't think this team needs Sunday's LC to shine. I was able to do MLC 12 with no signature LC, and I think that's a pro in my book, not needing Sunday's LC to perform well. Some cons, it's a bit of a strict setup. Obviously, I don't think a lot of you guys have Jiao Cho. Just seeing from my Discord, not a lot of people pulled Jiao Cho. He's a very niche unit that wasn't super popular unless you were really into Acheron teams. Kayla might have trouble getting those debuffs up, but is honestly a not bad replacement. But that's really it for cons. It's just if you don't have Jiao Cho, it just gets a little bit messy. For power rankings, I'm gonna give this a 4.5. Got amazing power in terms of this meta. For accessibility, I'm gonna give it 3.5. I know a lot of you guys didn't put Jiao Cho, but to be honest, it's a very simple team to build with no required signature LCs. That's why I want to bump it up a little bit. And overall, I want to give this team a 4 out of 5. Very strong team. Let's get on to our next team. On our number 4 spot, we have Yun Li Hyper Carry. With the addition of Sunday, she becomes one of the most powerful DPS we currently have. But with some caveats, let's get into it. The team features Yun Li, Sunday, Robin, and Huo Huo. You could also replace Robin with Ting Yun. This is going to make up for a very nice battery team to get Yun Li's ultimate back. But personally, I think Robin is a little bit better here for that huge action advance. But I think Ting Yun could compete. Now, to play this team, it has a very specific playstyle, and if you haven't played Yun Li, you're going to want to know what you're doing first. Otherwise, this team's just going to feel very wonky, and it just doesn't feel as great. Just some tips. Again, you just want to funnel that energy into Yun Li and just try to time your ults to when the enemies are about to hit Yun Li, gain the max damage. That's just a simple way to describe playing Yun Li. Let's talk about the pros. This team is versatile. You can play this pretty much anywhere. For this MLC 12, I think it works on the second half really well. The thing is, you just want to play this against enemies or bosses that just attack you a lot. Example, Hule, and even in this MLC 12, there's a lot of attacks thrown at you, and this is where Yun Li's damage can skyrocket. Single target is going to be strong. AoE is strong as heck. You're just getting a lot of value from this new best team that Yun Li has, and it functions extremely well. Right now, the cons are pretty slim. There's not really too many cons playing this team, to be honest. Meta-wise, I'm going to give this team a 4.5. This is one of the strongest teams we currently have. As of 2.7, we're going to see a lot of Yun Li playtime and MLC runs. For accessibility, I'm going to give it a 3.5. Overall, I'm going to give this team a 4 out of 5. Super strong team, and glad Yun Li can get a huge buff. He's really fun to play, and congrats to all the Yun Li mains out there. Onto our next team, we have the Boot Hill Break/Carry team. Boot Hill and Sunday have decent synergy with the action advance similar to Bronya, and this makes Sunday a great partner for Boot Hill, as he's going to benefit a lot from the things that Sunday provides. The team features Boot Hill, Ruan Mei for the break effect buffs, Gallagher to sustain and break enemy toughness. It's going to be a pseudo crit and break focus team, which Boot Hill can really benefit from. Ruan Mei is going to be giving those break effect buffs, coming in pretty handy paired with Sunday, which is a really strong team right now, especially with the enemy HP buffs. Now, the pros are the synergy. Being able to make Boot Hill attack an additional time is just massive for damage output. Boot Hill himself, again, just has really good utility, applying that physical weakness, making him really versatile. If you have Ruan Mei, you're going to be able to make that damage really stand out and get that weakness break a lot faster. I think one of the biggest cons for Boot Hill, I think it's the strict teams, as well as Boot Hill needing certain units to shine. If you don't have Ruan Mei, I think you're going to really struggle playing with certain other teams. I think it can work, but it's just not going to perform as good. In terms of power scaling, I'm going to give this team a 4 out of 5. It's a really strong team. 4 for accessibility because you really don't need any signature light cones for anybody, just the characters themselves. Not completely a 5 just because he needs that one run made to really shine. And I want to give this a 4 overall. It's an insane team with a high damage output. It's really good accessibility for free-to-plays and low spenders, and solidifying that Boot Hill and Sunday is a viable choice in this meta. On our number 2 spot, we have the Fei Xiao Hypercarry team. Now, Fei Xiao is already undisputably the best DPS we currently have, and she is already strong with her current premium setup. However, with the addition of Sunday, we have a new extremely strong comp on our hands. Let's get into the comp. We got Fei Xiao as our DPS. Sunday, and we have a very cool face here. We got Moze, and for the next slot, I recommend Gallagher. I think this is just a top team in this meta because of the sheer damage that this team has. Let's get on to some tips to play this team. Again, you're going to find that this team uses a ton of skill points because of Fei Xiao wanting to use her skill. You're going to want those 2 characters to just get a good abundance of skill points. This is going to come from Gallagher's basic ult into the basic attack, which gets 2 skill points. And then just with Moses' follow-up attacks, he's going to be able to get that skill point back, which is very, very nice. Having these 2 is crucial, and this setup allows you to not really require Sunday's light cone for this team. I would recommend Gallagher to be your fastest at 144 speed if you can, and then you're going to want Fei Xiao next, then Sunday at above 134 speed. Moze is Moze. He can go under 134 speed. He'll still attack a lot without it due to his passives. Mainly, we just want his follow-up attack to gain that skill point. Some pros are high single target, minimal relic investment. You don't really need the greatest speed rolls to run this team reliably. Lots of attacks, and with Sunday, he really helps with Fei Xiao's crit needs. I see this as a really solid option for you guys to use, needing only 2 limited 5 stars and no 5-star light cones required, which is great. I'm going to give this team a 4 out of 5 in the power scale. Really, really strong. I'm also going to give this a 4 for accessibility. This obviously could change if single target becomes less meta, and then with Fei Xiao's strengths plummeting, this team might go down a little bit, but for now it's a really good option. And then I want to give this a 4 overall. One of the biggest teams and biggest winners of this list. Last and especially not least, in our number 1 spot, we have Jing Yuan Hypercarry. But first, let's just highlight Jing Yuan and praise the gacha lords that we have the long-awaited Jing Yuan buff. Let's talk about the hypercarry comp. The team features Jing Yuan, Sunday, and our 3rd spot. We actually have quite a few options. You can just use what you have. Obviously, Robin is going to be quite strong, but you can pretty much use a lot of the Harmony characters. Just use what you have and use whatever sustain you have. I think Gallagher is going to be really nice, but you could also use Adventuring, Huo. More importantly, we gotta talk about the synergy with Jing Yuan and Sunday. Again, at full trace level, Jing Yuan and Lightning Lord will get an 80% damage buff. A lot of the Harmony units we have, it just didn't synergize well. But with Sunday, the fact that he can buff Lightning Lord by a huge amount, as well as giving Jing Yuan an extra turn, and for him to be at max stacks is going to be a lot more common, and Lightning Lord is just going to hit like a truck. A lot of the issues that Jing Yuan had were the main damage source of his kit being Lightning Lord. It's great to see we saw a huge turntable, and now Jing Yuan is amongst the top DPSs that we currently have. Now, to play this team, it's pretty much like a standard hyper carry, buffing up Jing Yuan to do massive damage. He does want to be faster than Sunday, so he needs to be above 135 speed. But one thing is, you want your 3rd and 4th character to be faster than Jing Yuan and Sunday, so you can get those 2 extra SPs to work with. If you're having issues with SP management and you don't have the light cone, apply the 2 tips I just mentioned, and you should be fine and dandy from there. Some pros about this team, obviously with Jing Yuan being an erudition unit, we just have some of the highest AoE damage in the game. The synergy with Sunday, giving those extra turns to Jing Yuan to get those stacks higher. It's also going to make Lightning Lord come back faster as Jing Yuan attacks more. The single target is actually pretty decent, which is pretty surprising with the rise of these HPs of these enemies. The thing is, it's only going to get higher and higher, but for now it's actually pretty respectable and can finish off tanky targets if need be. If you are using Jing Yuan Sunday Robin comps, I would actually really recommend Gallagher, as again, Robin isn't going to generate SP for the time being in her ultimate. Meta wise, I'm going to give this team a 4 out of 5. It's a really strong team. For accessibility, I'm gonna actually give this team a 4. It's really accessible to play. If you have Gallagher, pretty much anyone can be slotted in that third slot, and I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5 overall. Great team, and it's awesome to see Jingyuan can get that buff, and props to all the Jingyuan mains. That's it for the video, guys. Hopefully you found this video helpful. I had a fun time making this list. This video took a long time to make. Thank goodness I finished it before New Year's so I can make that meme. Huge thank you to all the creators that were mentioned in this video. They were doing the showcases. They're awesome dudes. Check out their channel if you can. Also, boys, I'm streaming on Twitch. I play a lot of Honkai Star Rail, as you guys probably know. I'm also really into Wuthering Waves right now. It's pretty fun for me. Zenless Zone Zero as well. And if you guys just want a fun time, consider joining in the Twitch. I'll see you there. That's all. Catch you out. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.